Our resilience, particularly the resilience of South African adolescents who are challenged by chronic and unacceptable levels of hardship, caring connections matter. And these caring connections are inclusive. They are broadly inclusive of family and non-family, young and old, all races, all abilities, all disabilities. They are connections that prioritize human solidarity and the well-being of our adolescents. The bottom line for today's lecture is that we found not only do caring connections matter for the resilience of South African adolescents, but they matter the most. So by far, the majority of the 61 articles that we included spoke to affective, emotional support that comes from people caring about adolescents. It is important that we understand that there are some facilitators or enablers of resilience, as we tend to call them nowadays, that are universal. And a really important one, for example, is being connected to caring others and having the capacity to self-regulate and so on. But what we are increasingly understanding is that these universally occurring resilience enablers take on a somewhat different form when we ask our own young people to explain their resilience. And so I'll give you an example quite quickly. When young people in South Africa, specifically Sesotho or isiZulu speaking young people, talk about what makes a difference to their resilience, they tend to talk about an inclusive human collective. And I use the word inclusive because unlike the international studies of resilience, it's not predictable who they're going to include. It could be biological parents, it could be somebody who's like a parent, it could be a peer who cares, it could even be a kind stranger. And so what we're understanding about our young people's resilience is that it reflects lots of what we already learned from the international studies, but that it is distinguished by local socio-cultural values, such as interdependence, and by local realities. And I think the point that we need to stress for this morning's lecture is the way these young people spoke about these caring connections. They repeatedly reported in the qualitative work, reported things like, my teacher loves me. My social worker is like my mother, she cares. My neighbor doesn't want me to go hungry. He's kind to me, and so on, and so on, and so on. So the connections go beyond just being polite. There's this fundamental loving kindness that underpins these connections. I think the first thing is that they have to understand that resilience is co-facilitated. So we make a mistake when we talk about a resilient young person. We say it because it's an easy way of phrasing things. But actually, young people who show good outcomes when life is really, really hard are young people who have the support of adults and peers that are pro-socially minded and that care. And so people out there can commit to championing the resilience of young people who are at risk by joining hands with them and letting them know they're not alone. They need to affirm the strengths that our young people have, because our young people have many magnificent strengths. But they also need to start to fight for two things. They need to fight for societies where there's less risk, for societies that enable our young people to be safe and to be less threatened. And they need to fight or advocate for more resources that are meaningful. Quality education, for example, is meaningful, according to our young people, to their resilience. And we need to listen to what young people tell us is meaningful and fight for that. What I learn repeatedly from the young people that I have the privilege of working with is that their lives are terrible. And despite the fact that their lives, their everyday lives really are an insult to their humanity, they are determined to keep going. And I salute their commitment to resilience, and I urge their parents, their teachers, their neighbors, their friends, their relatives to work with these young people so that their resilience is sustained, and that over the long run, we don't need young people to be resilient. We can just celebrate the fact that they are well and healthy. I believe we purposefully have to cultivate humanity. If we commit to this long and probably fairly bumpy research road to better understand how to cultivate humanity and sustain the importance of human solidarity for resilience, if we commit to this road, we will never lose. We will either win or we will learn.